Speak for yourself, host from Kansas City. I just had Andy Reid on. I imagine they had some losses on the defensive side. I still think they'll win their division. I still think they're the number 2 team in the AFC. Where do you land with the
number
Chiefs?
2 team? You have the Patriots number 1. Is that what you're saying?
I think New England's younger, more physical, and deeper this year.
Yeah. Look, the Chiefs have made some interesting additions to their defense. They've lost some guys, but I think adding Frank Clark, going to that 4-3 defense, adding Tyrann Mathieu, those are interesting additions. I want to see it play out. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be even better this year. Not saying his numbers are going to be better, but
right.
I think he's going to be more efficient and better. And I'm not sure his numbers are going to back up. I think he and Andy Reid are the Don Coryell and Dan Fouts of this era.
I completely agree. By the way, the best signing of the offseason nobody talked about was Frank Clark, next to Chris Jones, is probably the best tandem in the league inside compared to Philadelphia. So Frank Clark was unblockable in Seattle. And by the way, the big loss for Seattle this offseason is Frank Clark. I don't think they'll replace him. Andrew Luck's retirement, I defended him, didn't love the timing. What say you?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with his retirement. There is an opportunity. If people want to be critical of him, I don't have a problem with that. I will say this, though. I do think, particularly if he doesn't come back, his career is disappointing. And I think if you talk to people in Indianapolis, he's an odd dude. He was not a great leader. And I think the people that say and question like his passion for the game, is it at the same level as a Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or Ray Lewis? I think that's fair criticism. I think that's why, and again, I got no problem with him walking away. But if he loved the game the way that some of the other guys do, I don't think he would have walked away.
No, people said this about Jay Cutler. They're like, Jay Cutler's really smart, sometimes too smart. You know, it's hard to relate to people if you are like Aaron Rodgers sometimes. I think Aaron is tough on coaches because Aaron's smarter than most of his coaches. And I think Andrew Luck, everybody has blamed everybody else, and I love Luck. He's my favorite college quarterback I've ever seen. But in the first couple of years, he was not great at getting down and getting rid of the ball. He's smart enough to know his offensive line. Some of those hits were just not necessary hits, and I think some of that is, listen, I got a bad O-line, get down. He didn't, and I think over time, Frank Reich came in and said, fella, just throw the ball away. Don't extend every play. Zeke holdout. Running backs. I don't know, this Tony Pollard guy, Whitlock.
No.
He looks very good to me.
And I don't care how good he looks. He's not Ezekiel Elliott. There are a handful of NFL running backs who are difference makers and are unique from everybody else in the league. I think Zeke is one of those guys. I don't think it's fair to compare him to Todd Gurley and say, Todd Gurley came into the NFL with knee problems. Zeke's been a durable football player since, being a little kid. So I think that Zeke does make a difference. I think he deserves to be the highest paid running back in the NFL.
Coming 2 years early in a contract, you'd still make him the highest paid.
Well, because I think this system is unfair. I think that this system, this collective bargaining agreement that locks up these rookies to this wage scale, and then for 5 years you got control of him. Zeke at 24 is worth a lot more money than he's being paid, and I don't blame him for trying to go get it right now.
What'd you make of the AB helmet fiasco?
It was a hoax. I think that AB wants to retire as healthy as possible. That's his goal right now. It's not winning. It's not being super productive. It's about how can I squeeze these last $30 million out of Oakland with taking as little risk as possible. And if I need an excuse to get out of training camp and miss all the preseason and anything to avoid work, I think Zeke is into. I mean, not Zeke, AB is into. And so I think the whole helmet deal was just a charade to give him an excuse to be away and take heat off of the fact that he burned up his feet doing cryotherapy.
Well, it's interesting because OBJ, Julio Jones, has practiced less in recent years. OBJ has been absent from some practices. Some of the biggest stars on the perimeter in the league may be just saying, hey, we got a little NBA feel to us. We're not going to take these hits if we don't have to.
I think for AB it's more pronounced than for OBJ or Julio Jones. I think both of those guys, Julio and OBJ, are still about building their resume and legacy. I think AB thinks he's done all he needs to do, Those 9 years he put up in Pittsburgh will get him into the Hall of Fame. Now it's just, how can I get out of here with this bag of money and make sure I'm never in concussion protocol again?
Big Ben will not do his Monday radio show. Now, I always thought Brady's very corporate. Brady goes on the air, sounds like a local senator. Ben can be a little more passive-aggressive, like Aaron Rodgers. You put him on a radio, ask him a question, and he can go sideways. Plant a little passive-aggressive seat. I'm a fan of Ben not going on radio.
Yeah, I think it's a good move. I'm been a critic and a fan of Ben Roethlisberger.
You can be both.
Yeah, and so I'm going to defend him in this regard. He and Tomlin, we talked about it earlier this week. Looking at AB and what he's done in Oakland has made me go, oh, my God, what was Pittsburgh going through? Because all we're dealing with is the stuff we hear about. Just imagine all the things we don't hear about. And so I think for Ben as a leader, for Mike Tomlin as a head coach and a leader, I think they were very compromised by AB. And so I can't wait to see what they do this year and in the next couple, 2 or 3 years without the AB headache. I think Pittsburgh's the team that I kind of like the most going into this year.
It's the old theory. If you see a couple arguing in public or at a party, what's the ride home like? I always feel that. So I have a friend, I'm not going to mention his name. He played in the NFL. You know him.
Yep.
And he's an offensive lineman and part-time broadcaster. He called Mike Tomlin during this AB thing. And Mike, who's very player-friendly, told this guy that we both know, oh, you have no idea.
Yeah.
He goes, listen, we hide stuff pretty good here. He's like, and by the way, this league has always had expressive guys, so it's not the end of the world. I kind of wish both Pittsburgh and AB would say this. Pittsburgh's like, we didn't pay him much, and we got a ton of production. And AB's like, I inherited the best deep ball thrower. This should be a very happy divorce. It really should be.
It should be, but if I'm AB, it's not, because, Pittsburgh is a winning franchise year after year. Big Ben is a guy that will take hits to get his receivers the ball down the field. He's leaving probably the best quarterback in the league for Antonio Brown to go work with Derek Carr, who's, who knows what he is, but he's certainly not Big Ben. I think everybody wins in this divorce except for AB, and that's why he's been the most irate.
You're a huge college football fan. So am I. I said this. I think Clemson offensively, we could be looking at the best offense I've ever seen in college football. Running back, All-American. Receiver, All-American. Quarterback, best I've seen. Offensive lineman, 4 NFL players. Now, last night they're choppy because they don't get 4 preseason games, and Georgia Tech goes to bowls. Maybe I'm overstating it. When I look at that Clemson offense, I don't think they've replaced Alabama, although Alabama's had 2 key offseason linebacker injuries. But I do think, Jason, we're looking at something special here.
When you say that, I'm starting to run through my mind.
The Miami Hurricanes 2001, the Butch Davis recruited team. I think the Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart team that had 9 pros on it. I think we're getting in that category with this team.
I go even further back with USC. There were some USC teams with Marcus Allen or Charles White in the backfield and the entire offensive line, damn near first-team All-Americans, had some receivers on the outside. Quarterback's not as good, but it's like when Rodney Peete was at USC. And so I've seen some great – and you're right, what Clemson has assembled reminds me of that.
It's funny. It took him 4 years to pop, and Clemson's a football school. Chip Kelly's 13 games in. Everybody's bailing on him. It's like John Wooden took 16 years to pop to win his first title at UCLA. We have no patience. Like in our,
I will say that I did watch UCLA last night.
They weren't good.
They couldn't block anybody.
Well,
that was bad.
Well, I mean, he's 13.
They're young.
They're young. It's 13 games in. But it is funny. We bail on people. And I'm not saying Chip Kelly, but it should be noted he won 12 games a year at Oregon. They got no players in that state.
Well, what I was defending for last night is
20 seconds.
They were overmatched, but somehow stayed in that game. So he knows he's doing something right.
Jason Whitlock, September, entire month dedicated to celebrate sleeping. Casper.com through September 2nd. Speak for yourself after our show today. Jason Whitlock, good seeing you, bud. Hour 3 next. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.